So you're thinking about selling final expense over the phone, but you're curious as to what the numbers are that will show you what the level of success there is in being an agent selling over the phone in the final expense space. And what I'm going to do in this video is actually walk you through the numbers from A to Z on everything you need to know about how final expense telesales works and how it can be a very profitable and lucrative business if ran the right way. So if you're interested in selling final expense and you want to know what those numbers are, stick around because you're definitely going to find them out. My name is David DeFord. I own DeFord Insurance Group. We train agents nationally to sell final expense in person and over the phone. Our niche is in mentorship on a one-on-one basis, and we back up our systems, our strategies, with a make money guarantee. Please check out more about how that works at davidduford.com/FAQ. So let's jump right into it. So we're going to start with lead costs, then we're going to get to time on task, how much time you got to put into this, conversion rates, pickup rates, persistency rates. Some of the stuff you're like, what is this? Never heard of it. We'll explain all this as we go through it because it's going to be very, very useful for you to determine, again, if the telesales model for final expense is sensible for you. So for lead cost, it depends if you're part-time or full-time. And I'll tell you straight up, I don't believe telesales is good for the part-time agent. Let me explain why. We have recruited part-timers in DeFord Insurance Group for years. And then we started telesales. And what I noticed is that telesales being a lot more challenging and needing more coaching and mentorship than face-to-face training, that telesales is much, much more difficult part-time because of the restriction of time to go out there and sell over the phone. It's not to say that there aren't any people successful selling over the phone final expense. But in my experience, the part-timers in our agency just don't do well, even with coaching, even with mentorship. So we made a decision to stop recruiting part-timers entirely for telesales. We still recruit them for face-to-face agents. And the reason is because it's just too challenging to have a half commitment to it. You really need to be full-time. So all this is said and done. I don't think you should do this business if you're going to come into it part-time, at least on the telesales side, until you are ready to work a full-time schedule. Now, for full-timers, my lead cost recommendation, if you're going to buy third-party leads, is at least start at $1,000 to $1,250 a week. With final expense telesales, you need a lot of leads. You need a ton of leads, and you're going to have to spend a good chunk of change, a little bit more than maybe the face-to-face agent does starting off. If you self-generate your own, or if you're involved in, let's say, one of our management programs where we give you the cost of the lead plus a small management fee, you probably are going to need somewhere around $750 to $1,000 in order to have enough leads to make a true run at this business. Again, I can't stress this enough. If you want to do final expense telesales right, you need to have too many leads, not too few. Most agents, they're just coy about buying enough leads. We want you to be buried in leads. What's the worst that can happen? You just sell your way out of them. The exact opposite is true with too few, so we want to avoid that if all possible. Now, there's also another number behind the business is time on task, the talk time, the amount of time you're on the phone trying to get somebody on the phone or closing someone on the phone or selling somebody on the phone. I think you should be in this 50 hours a week. If you come into this trying to do this 30, 35 hours a week, you're probably going to fail. Just not enough time. It's part of the reason why we don't take part-timers anymore, because statistically that bore out when we looked at the numbers and the production for the part-timers. So I think you should go all in. Give yourself 50 plus hours a week to do this the right way. Maybe over time you can scale that back, but again, this business is so awesome. It's a six-figure opportunity. Why wouldn't you give yourself the best chances, especially getting started where it's the most difficult? So time on task is important. At least give yourself 50 hours a week. Also, the pickup rate. So what happens, pickup rate is where we call and what rate of them actually pick up. And this is maybe a little surprising. But then again, who wants to talk to people on the phone? So maybe it isn't surprising. Somewhere around 25 to 30% of your digital leads should pick up the phone if they're fresh and exclusive and they're generated off of Facebook. So that means like most of them won't pick up. Why is that the case? I don't know, but it is what it is. But we want to get as many of those to pick up as possible, and somewhere around 25 to 30% is what we would expect. Now, there are some tips to increasing the pickup rate I'm going to share with you here in order to maximize this number. First of all, triple dial. What's triple dial? That's where you dial the number, they don't pick up, you dial it a second and then maybe a third time, or always a third time if they don't pick up the second time. There's something about getting that sequence of calls that breaks the conditioning of people not answering the phone. They otherwise wouldn't. They pick it up, and now you've gotten them on the phone where you maybe wouldn't have ever gotten them on the phone if you just called them once. That's critical. Make sure you implement texting as long as you follow TCPA rules. You've got an opt-in permission. Send them text messages, introducing yourself, building some brand, following up with them. If they don't pick up, that's a way to increase pickup rates. And then also implement in the telesales process preset appointments. So in our management program, we can set up our agents, for example, to not just get leads coming in on an inbound basis or an outbound basis they call, but some of them will set appointments on the calendar. Now, 30 to 40% show up. It's not like, perfect. It is what it is. Some people are going to show up, some aren't. But the point is, if you get more people to show up, it at least kind of sets your day up a little bit, and it helps offload some of that so that you can do more business. Conversion rate, how many of your leads should convert into sales? Again, with telesales, it's always going to be a small percentage. The goal is somewhere between 4% and 5%. If you can convert around 4 to 5% of your totality of Facebook-based leads, you're likely going to net a high enough return on income to justify being in this business. Anything below 3%, in my opinion, is you're not working hard enough, and it just isn't really, it's not going to be profitable for you. So 4% or up is the absolute standard you should be achieving for. The next thing that number in the business really important is persistency. This is a measurement of how much of the business you write sticks on the books for 12 months. Your goal is to have 80% of that business stick. 20% is going to fall off. People change their mind, they get replaced, something happens. If it's any lower than 80%, my feeling is you're not doing a good enough job building value. You're not doing good enough job selecting the best carrier to write on the plan, and maybe you're with a one product carrier, and that generally leaves lower persistency, and that's things that you just have to incorporate if that's the case. But the goal here for most agents should be an independent agent, offer multiple carriers so that you get the best combination of price or coverage. And if you sell in a consultative way, not a pushy way, then you're likely to retain more business and lift your persistency up as high as you can. Average case size, how much in premium can you expect to generate in telesales? It tends to be a little bit higher than face-to-face sales. I've noticed a premium size in the $800 to $1,000 range with a number of my agents, so I think it's safe to say somewhere in that range is probably going to be the norm. And then, of course, your average commission, it's going to vary greatly. There are organizations that have free leads. They'll pay a 50% commission, but you get what you pay for. You're getting free leads, right? There are others that are brokers that'll pay 100% plus, like what we do, also mentor and coach you. It just depends on where you go. To me, if you're going to be independent and you're going to get some coaching, you need at least 100% commission for your major carriers, like what we do at the Ford Insurance Group, to make it worth your while. And then guaranteed issue typically pays a little bit less, maybe 30 to 40 points less, depending on the contract. And your mix of business is going to be about 70% level, 30% guaranteed issue, give or take, depending on how you sell and what options that you have for your clients. And then free leads, yeah, we talked about that 30 to 50%. So last but not least, the most important metric, I think, to telesales and really any business that's based off of investing in the marketing is your return on investment. If I invest X amount of dollars into marketing, how many Y dollars do I get back in revenue? And this measurement is what you really need to know if the marketing and business model you're using is profitable and that it returns you a profit. So if we take all of these numbers we talked about, and we set up a $900 average case size, an average of 800 and 1,000, and then we multiply it by $7, that's the average cost of a self-generated lead. And so we're going to look at self-gen first, then we're going to look at retail if you buy your leads. And we multiply that by 5%. In other words, it takes 20 leads to make one sale, okay? We get a 6.43 return on investment, okay? Not too bad. Actually, it's really good. So that means if you put $1,000 into the system every week, you're going to get back $6,430 in revenue of annual premium, which usually means if you're buying leads, it's a pretty good spread of commission. And then the retail side, if you take 900 and say retail is about $13 a lead because they're going to charge you a little bit more so they make profit, your ROI is going to be 3.46. And this is where a lot of the complaints come in, I think, from the business. Like telesales just doesn't make as much money. And there is some truth to that, especially if you're buying leads from a vendor. Not that that's a bad thing with a 3.46 ROI. That's very scalable. You can make a good net income off of that. But it is lower than what you will get self-generating your leads, which is really helpful in driving profitability. And it is lower than what one would get if they were selling face-to-face with purchase leads. So these are the quick overall numbers of what the final expense telesales business looks like. I know I threw a lot at you, but I wanted to at least give you some guidance and some clarity on what numbers really matter. To me, the big takeaways here, if I could give you my professional opinion, number one is make sure you're calling as much as possible with as many leads as possible. To me, so much of this stuff works itself out if you're on the phone 50 plus hours a week and you're buying 1,000 to 1,250 a week in leads, retail or self-gen. If you've got 100 to 150 leads that you're looking at every week as a full-time agent calling 50 hours, you probably are going to make sales. You're probably going to cover your costs. You're probably going to profit. It's when you don't do one or the other, or worse, both, that you run into a lot of these problems and issues along the way. And then last but not least, you should make sure that you investigate the telesales model as thoroughly as possible to make sure it's for you. And if you do, you need to understand, and this is the thing about telesales, it's harder than face-to-face. It is not easier. It is measurably more challenging. And I think one of the biggest differentiators to getting success in this business is to have a coach, not just a video to watch or somebody who might speak to you once or twice a month, but a dedicated coach that meets one-on-one, small groups, to listen to sales calls, to coach you on your tonality, your performance of the script, to give you constructive criticism. Because if you don't get this in this challenging endeavor known as telesales and final expense, you're likely going to fail like most agents. And while the failure rate is high for the business in general, for telesales it's higher because most people bite off more than they could chew. They don't really know how difficult it is until they get into it. So I can't stress enough, this is why we went to the mentorship model at the beginning of 2023, because we see the power in coaching people into the best success that they can be, especially in the telesales final expense space. My name is David DeFord. If you'd like to learn more about how mentorship works with us and what we look for in an applicant to join DeFord Insurance Group, please head over to daviddeford.com/FAQ. And thanks for watching. See you next time.